Hello, and welcome to this iThrive video series called Planning for Success in 2021, featuring Dr. Ron Meeker. Each video will help you identify your priorities, implement your plans, and lay the right foundation for success. This session is called How I Retired When I Wanted to. I'm Dr. Scott Jentz, and I'm proud to be serving as your iThrive interviewer for this video series. We're featuring the insights of Dr. Ron Meeker, a recently retired doctor of optometry whose 35-year career as a clinician and business owner allowed him to develop an incredibly thoughtful and calculated approach to business planning. He now serves as a key contributor to the iThrive community. Hello, Dr. Meeker.
Hello, Scott. Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to share my experience here.
In this video, we're going to discuss the resources that are essential for a business to be successful. And you need to think about these so you can achieve your ultimate personal goal, retirement. We'll discuss everything from people to software, equipment, and leadership. So let's get right into it. Other videos in this series have discussed personal and business goal setting, but we now need to think about how to put real plans into action. As you think about your eye care business, Ron, what was the key resource that you activated for success?
Well, Scott, the most important resource we all have as ECPs is our staff. It's really the power of numbers. There are more staff than doctors. And any person-to-person interaction in your practice has the opportunity to generate revenue. Although patients may value their interaction with the doctor the most, there are likely several times more personal interactions with other staff in a typical visit in your office. Think of it this way. Could the check-in employee at the front desk explain the benefits of the new product or service that you're offering and provide the patient some promotional materials? Could the tech suggest that the patient repeat their Optomap since it's been 2 years since their last Optomap? Will the optician explain the benefits of blue light protection for the patient with heavy screen usage? And does the sign-out employee make sure to schedule appointments for family members who are overdue? If you communicate the importance of these simple acts to your employees regularly, educate them, motivate them, and reward them, your staff will be the engine of your success. All you need to do is provide the gas and steer the bus.
Okay, that's great. So think about communications with staff. A lot of practices have different styles and different ways. How do you go about recommending communications with staff?
Well, you're absolutely right. The staff can't read your mind. And so you need to communicate very well with them and share your vision. It's important to hold meetings regularly. Personally, I use the quick informal huddle each morning at the beginning of the day. We generally held longer meetings monthly where we would discuss items in more detail. During those longer meetings, we might pick a certain goal, let's say AR coding, and review the benefits of the AR coding for the patient, as well as the benefit to the practice if we met the goal we had set for increasing AR percentage. The same would apply if we added a new service or a product, such as Optomap. We'd make sure the benefits to the patient and the practice were understood by everyone. I also used written memos and later instant messaging through electronic health records to do short, quick communications. And when you're doing those daily quick communications, don't forget to send positive reinforcement as well as criticisms. It really helps keep the staff motivated.
It's interesting. I really subscribe to a book by writer Patrick Lencioni called The Advantage. And the summary of that book goes like this: create clarity, communicate clarity, and over-communicate clarity. And that's really what you've summarized. Yeah. I've consulted for a lot of ECPs and served ECPs as part of my career. And they often work hard, but don't always understand how to harness the power of their leadership. Tell us how you've tried to build that humble type of clear leadership style.
Well, first off, it's critical to lead by example. Make sure your actions demonstrate your commitment to achieving the goals you set. It's also important to include the staff themselves in the goal setting to get them to buy in. Make them aware of the areas in which the practice is not performing to expectations and give them a say in both choosing the next metric to target and the methods by which to improve. Then set a realistic goal together. Discuss what is standing in the way of achieving that goal and how to overcome those obstacles. Also use that staff meeting time for leading performers in your practice to share their successful methods with others who may not be performing as well. Another way staff can help you from the bottom line is to keep certain expenses in check. Share some of the expense numbers with your staff and set goals to reduce those costs where possible. For example, if you see the cost of your office supplies is climbing, motivate staff to come up with ideas to reduce those costs. Create a culture where staff understands and has incentive to increase revenue and decrease costs, where they act like owners themselves. Share numbers and results with the staff on a regular basis to keep their interest and motivation in achieving the goals you set together. If an individual stands out as underperforming compared to others, discuss ways to improve in a one-on-one meeting with that particular employee.
I love all that information sharing and getting employees to think like an owner, but oftentimes it's hard to get them to do it, and that really requires clear leadership. I suppose we should now cover the topic of staff incentives. Where do you stand on staff incentives, whether it's financially speaking or otherwise?
Well, there's many ways to incentivize your staff. And believe it or not, much as we'd like to think that we appreciate the staff, sometimes just simply recognizing a job well done is incentive enough. I've also, though, gone ahead and used bonus pay incentives, celebratory events like bringing in a lunch from a favorite restaurant. We used a grooming allowance where we would provide money toward reimbursement for clothing, hair care, manicures, things that can be in and out of the office. It's a win-win. You can create a game out of a quest to reach a goal and foster healthy competition amongst your staff. Sort of an extreme, once after a particularly successful quarter, I surprised the staff by blocking off the schedule for a few hours. And under the guise of a long staff meeting, when they showed up for the meeting, I said, we're going on a field trip. And we went out to the parking lot, had a van waiting. We drove to the mall where I gave them each $100 and said, hey, have fun shopping. Come on back here in a couple hours. And it was a big boost to the staff. I mean, it was a costly event because we had the $100 for every employee plus the time out of the office, but I believe that it more than paid for itself in the goodwill it generated. The bottom line is any way you can create a scenario that improves the bottom line and also legitimately boosts the self-image of the staff members, it's a win-win.
Those are great tangible examples. And I can't help but reference another business improvement book, something called Drive by Daniel Pink. You should really search, our audience should search for the Drive video that talks about how it's not always about pay, but recognition and letting people show what they're masters of. That helps make people feel like they are really being appreciated. So that's great stuff. Let's talk again about driving the practice. What non-human resources have you used to drive it, and how do you manage them?
Well, technology played a big part in the growth of my practice. And I've always been kind of a tech geek anyway. It's an interest of mine. In fact, so much so that I was one of the first adopters of EHR back in 1997. It was actually a DOS program back then, believe it or not. So over the years, technology not only improved my ability to diagnose, but it also generated a recurring revenue stream for follow-up. For example, a choroidal nevus that needs to be followed regularly via imaging, or a glaucoma patient requiring serial fields, photos, OCTs. Instruments also made the practice more efficient by performing functions faster and more accurately. Something as simple as automated lens meters and refractors that integrated with our EHR saved time and reduced errors in pretesting. Integrating hardware and software with our computer network and EHR also enabled impressive patient education, leading to referrals of family and friends. So there were both tangible and intangible benefits to my commitment to technology.
So let's assume that every one of our listeners has got a pretty integrated technology platform. What I really heard you say is it comes down to how you applied it, to making sure that the nevus patient isn't somebody who go, well, really busy, don't think I'm going to reschedule it for a follow-up, and instead committing to clinical practice guidelines and having, from a doctor position, driving recommendations. Is that right?
It's absolutely correct. And I'm assuming a lot of guys do this too, but we had a schedule for our techs, and we would be taking that patient that needed follow-up. And when they booked for their next appointment, they would be getting an appointment with me. But before they saw me, they'd be getting an appointment with my tech to have that test done that they needed.
Along this path of practice success, there were probably times where you just weren't sure what the best next move was. Who did you look to for advice?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I wouldn't be where I am today without the help of several professionals. I needed capital to purchase my professional building and buy the equipment in the early days. My long-term business relationship with my local banker paid off and got excellent rates on my loans and low charges on my bank accounts. My accountant was helpful in giving me advice on how to structure my business, and of course on tax advice, both personally and professionally. My partner and I used a practice consultant when we drew up our partnership agreement, and that was critical to both of our success. And lastly, my financial planner helped me quantify and qualify the portfolio I would need to fulfill my long-term personal goals.
That's a great point. Too few of us use that kind of financial planning expertise. Great point. How did you derive guidance from the non-traditional resources that exist in the eye care industry?
One of the best investments of time and money I made along the way was to participate in a peer information sharing group in the early 2000s. For one thing, this was where I was first introduced to the importance of business metrics, which became critical to my success. We were all running a business, but we often didn't pay as much attention to metrics as we should have. Being in this group forced me to pull data from my EHR and fill out spreadsheets to generate metrics, because we had all committed to sharing our data at the meetings. These days, there's no excuse for not paying attention to business metrics, because we all have EHR, and metrics can be at our fingertips with almost no effort using EdgePro, for example. This peer group also functioned as a think tank, generating new ideas and inspiring each other to try new things. The unique ability to meet other ECPs with similar practices and learn from their successes is what gave me the confidence to buy and renovate a professional building and purchase cutting-edge equipment. From this group, I developed some connections with ECPs that have been long-lasting and mutually beneficial.
If you could go back to your 20-year younger self, when you think about staff and you think about technology and you think about leadership, would you suggest that they focus on one of those just slightly ahead of the other?
I would say staff, it trumps everything. If you can have the right relationship and think of what you have a vision for what you want for yourself in the future. And of course, getting there requires your business to be the engine of that success. You're taking what you want and you're dividing that up among at least 4 or maybe 5 times as many people. And if they're all of the same ilk and they're all going for the same goal, you're going to get there much quicker.
You ultimately retired when you wanted to. Has this experience been one that you think you really expected when you did your backward planning 20 more years ago? Tell us about how retirement has felt.
Well, it feels great. I'm only a month into it at this point, but I would say that, there were certainly events along the way that sort of made me come to different decisions earlier in my life, sort of taking advantage of things that went well. But if I look back at it, try to be objective, had I not done planning and not implemented these business practices, those opportunities that were somewhat unexpected never would have occurred.
It's all about the planning. And one last question, as you think about that first day of retirement now, can you give our listeners a sense of what it feels like? Everyone talks about what that first day is like. What was it like?
Freedom. I was always sort of over the top freaky about being on time. So just the fact that I don't have to be on time every 10 to 20 minutes is such a relief. That alone, it makes me smile.
It's worth all the planning that you put into it.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, you've met a type of success that every ECP can achieve. And I can't thank you enough, Dr. Ron Meeker, for sharing your perspective. It feels very relevant to our audience, and congrats on your achievement of retirement when you wanted to.
Thanks, Scott. And thanks to GPN for the opportunity to contribute to this great resource for ECPs.
To the iThrive community of listeners, thanks for watching this iThrive video, part of the series called Planning for Success in 2021. Make certain to look at each video in this series to get the best perspective for your optimal planning process for this new year and beyond. Until our next iThrive interview, be great at all you do.